بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين. اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. After finishing the series on Imam and Wilaya, I have been thinking and consulting about what would be very beneficial and suitable book to choose for next series. And after considering many options, many topics, so I thought it would be perhaps a very suitable choice for us to start reviewing a very informative and very well written book on akhlaq by the late Imam Khomeini, and that is 40 hadith, or in Arabic 40 hadith, and in Farsi 40 hadith. Of course, this is a selection of 40 hadith with detailed commentary by Imam Khomeini. What makes it also maybe more relevant is that we are approaching the demise anniversary of Imam Khomeini in the next few days, so that would be also adding to the significance of working on this. But the main thing is the content of the book. Imam Khomeini, in his introduction to the book, he says that he wanted to follow a tradition of ulama, a kind of practice which has been common among ulama for centuries, and that is to choose 40 hadith and make it available for people so that they can benefit from these 40 hadiths. In the course of history, many ulama, Sunni and Shia, have done this. Either they have selected 40 hadiths from different fields of Islam, different aspects of life, or sometimes they have focused 40 hadiths about particular issue. For example, 40 hadiths about family, 40 hadiths about youths, for example. And the reason for this common practice among Sunni and Shia scholars is the hadith that has been narrated by Sunni and Shia narrators from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this hadith is very well documented, and even some ulama have said maybe we can say this hadith is mutawatir. Mutawatir means it has been so many times narrated in generation by generation that leaves no chance of thinking that this might be not authentic. For example, in the Shia sources, we have this hadith narrated by Sheikh Saduq rahmatullah alayh, from Imam Qadim alayhi salam, from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allama Majlisi in Biharul Anwar says that this hadith is mashhur and mustafid, means has been very commonly narrated. Rather, it has been said that it is mutawatir. So it's very famous hadith. What is the hadith? The hadith is this: Man hafidha. Maybe in some versions there are differences in wording, but the general idea is the same. Man hafidha ala ummati arba'ina haditha ينتفعون بها بعثه الله يوم القيامة فقيها عالما. Whoever memorizes for my ummah 40 hadith that they would benefit from, ينتفعون بها, they would benefit from these hadiths. On the day of judgment, Allah would resurrect him faqihan aliman, as a learned person, as a person who has deep understanding of religion. Faqih, either in the sense of jurist or in its literal sense, means someone who has deep understanding. Faqih al-rajul means he has understood very well. يتفقه في الدين, that we have also in Surah Tawbah. So basically the idea is that if you manage to register, to memorize, or maybe perhaps hefs in the sense of safeguarding and registering and keeping it available, 40 hadiths that people can benefit from them in their lives. It's not just something that has scientific value, something which has practical value. They can apply it in their lives. Then, because of this effort, you will be resurrected as an alim. And perhaps this shows, in my humble understanding, that these hadiths should not be repetitive, because if someone instead of choosing 40 different hadiths, for example, goes and finds 40 hadiths, but there are different versions of the same hadith, this is not enough. Why? Because the point is that if based on these hadiths you can improve 40 points in your life, 40 aspects of your character and behavior, 40 aspects of your personal and social relations, then we can make sure that you are almost in the right condition. This is my understanding. Means if you bring 40 positive changes to the life of yourself and ummah, then you have almost completed the development, and therefore you can be resurrected as faqih alim. Because what is, in the end of the day, the purpose of ilm? Isn't it to know how you can improve and do it? You know what make you and your society better, and you do it. You know it and you do it. So this person is aware and is informing people and helping people in improving in 40 aspects. They should benefit from this hadith. So he would be resurrected as alim. I think I mentioned was this in one of the lectures, that in my humble opinion, if a person in the process of doing something for the sake of Allah and making sufficient efforts, he dies. A hard working, sincere student, seeker of knowledge, if he dies before he becomes alim, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would complete for him this process and he would be resurrected inshallah as alim. Why? Because this was his intention, this was his struggle and efforts, but his life was not just enough. Inshallah, this process will be completed. So, the same here. This person who is committed to keeping and teaching and practicing 40 hadiths about 40 different points that would benefit ummah in their life, he would be resurrected as an alim. Of course, if someone can do this more, it would be a greater alim, because the differences between ranks among mu'mineen is based on their knowledge. يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would raise those of you who have faith, and those who have been given knowledge, Allah would raise them in ranks. First based on iman, then after iman based on different levels of knowledge among mu'mineen, as Allah Tabaraka says. Okay, so Imam Khomeini, because of this hadith and a practice which has been common among scholars, Sunni Shia, which is inspired by this hadith, decided to choose 40 hadiths and comment on them so that himself and other people can benefit from. And we know that actually these were first given as lessons on akhlaq to the Hawza students, and sometimes also maybe other people used to go and attend in the holy city of Qom. Actually, we know that it has been taught, this series was taught in Madrasa Fayziyya and Mullah Sadiq. So in two schools, Imam Khomeini used to teach this, and then he himself made it as a book. And when he made it as a book, it was in the year 1358. 1358 Hijri Qamari. So it is 79 years ago, because we are now 1439. He completed this in 1358 Hijri Qamari, 79 years ago, while still his teacher Ayatollah Shah Abadi was alive. Imam Khomeini in Akhlaq and Irfan very much benefited from the late Ayatollah Shah Abadi, and sometimes he refers in this book to his teacher Ayatollah Shah Abadi. Okay. Before I start with the first hadith, I want to give you a little general introduction to the content of the book. There are obviously 40 hadiths. So the book is organized around 40 hadiths. Out of these 40 hadiths, 34 hadiths relate directly to akhlaq, to ethics, to morality. And 6 of them relate to aqaid and ma'arif, to beliefs and doctrines. Of course, those have also indirectly moral impact. And he brings important ideas there, especially from mystical perspective. So 34 are about akhlaq. And these 34 are divided into different categories. We can classify them in this way. Because akhlaq is a journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he tries to explain first what is human being. And he very much here focuses on clarifying the concept of fitrah. And he, in this particular aspect, very much reflects on the teachings of his teacher, Ayatollah Shah Abadi. And Imam Khomeini in one place says that he was very special in analyzing and exploring the concept of fitrah. So he starts with explaining human being, especially with particular reference to fitrah. He talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our end, because we are to move towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then about akhlaq. When it comes to akhlaq, he talks about what we should achieve and what we should avoid. For example, he talks about tafakkur, contemplation, ikhlas, sincerity, shukr, gratitude, ibadat, worship, yaqeen, certainty, tawbah, repentance, sabr, patience, tawakkul, trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the things that we have to equip ourselves with. He also talks about the obstacles, the problems that we have to avoid, or if we suffer, to remove. About riyah, showing off, ujb, self-admiration, kibr, arrogance, hasad, jealousy, hubb dunya, excessive love for dunya, nifaq, hypocrisy, following one's lower desires, hawa, ghaiba, in this it means backbiting, ghiba, asabiyya, biasness, shak, doubt, unnecessary doubt, waswas, to be frequently doubting and not being able to establish and making up your mind. You don't establish any opinion. So he would talk about both sides of akhlaq, virtues and vices, good practices, bad practices, and all with a good understanding of humanity and what humanity has to achieve. He believes that all the prophets have come. And Allah has also given us aql, intellect, for tarbiyatun nafs. So prophets and aql, two hujjah of Allah, are for self-development, self-education, for self-formation. Tarbiyatun nafs. So this is the aim. Then he says that we don't just need a book on akhlaq. This is also very important. He says a book on akhlaq can be, in my wording, his idea is this. A book on akhlaq sometimes can be even not very reliable in theory, not a well balanced and objective understanding of akhlaq. Akhlaq is not something that everyone can really deal with. Yes, it is true that the basics, the principles, everyone by his fitra can understand. But when it comes to details, to priorities, there are lots of technicalities here. Not every alim, not every scholar who has written on akhlaq has come up with a balanced, comprehensive understanding. But even those who have come with good understanding, Imam Khomeini says sometimes their books are like prescriptions. They give you names of the medicines that you have to take. They show you what's the treatment for your illness. But he says this is not enough. He says a good book on akhlaq should not just give us medicine's name, give us a good prescription. A good book on akhlaq should actually treat us. In Arabic and Farsi, we say mu'alaja, treatment. When you go to a doctor, he should behave and interact with you in the way that your problem is solved, your disease is over. Not just he gives you a piece of paper on which there are some names. He should talk to you, he should encourage you. If there is something bad that you eat or you do, he has to work with you mentally, psychologically, prepare you to take the medicine to avoid harmful things. When it comes to akhlaq, if you go to a teacher of akhlaq, he shouldn't just give you theoretical lessons. He should practically help you. Now, Imam Khomeini says a good book of akhlaq also should do the same. And here he brings the concept of maw'idha to do wa'adh. Maybe in English we can say preaching. To give maw'idha is not just to teach, to give information. Who is wa'idh? Wa'idh, whether it be a person or a book written by such person, is the one that helps you in moral development, helps you in overcoming your flaws and faults and deficiencies and impurities and illnesses. Therefore, you see, Imam Khomeini in this book uses a language which is not the language of just writing an academic book. Yes, ideas are well established, like academic book, academic thesis. Everything is documented, everything is argued for, but he is not satisfied with this. He didn't want to just write a book and add one more title to Islamic library. His aim was to write a book that would engage the reader and make a very intimate relation with the reader. a book that in the absence of being in touch with a godly scholar would be your godly guide and give you energy, give you direction, give you determination to become a better person. So this is why he wrote this book. And the language he uses is such language. He talks to the reader. He tries to engage with the readers. And very much he tries to give you hope and determination. In addition to giving you knowledge that, of course, any scholarly book should give, but he tries to help you in a personal way to become a more hopeful and more determined and more positive and more alert person. So this is what I wanted to say about this book. I wanted to also start with the first hadith, but our time is already, I think, coming to an end. So maybe this can remain as an introduction, and then inshallah we would start with the next hadith in the next week, inshallah, which is a beautiful hadith about jihadun nafs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise and elevate the position of all our scholars, especially Imam Khomeini, and the people that in addition to giving us knowledge and direction, they lived by their knowledge to the best capacity that they had, and they opened for us a path that made it clearer for us what to do and gave us honor of being a faithful person in this day and age. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.